Hello, I'm Adam.
I'm Adrian.
Welcome to Cast from the Crypt. What are we talking about, Adrian?
Scream, the second one.
Yeah, famous title.
Scream 2.
Scream 2.
Yeah,
1997, the year after Scream 1. Yeah,
you're right. Wow.
I pretty recently rewatched Scream, and I love Scream, personally. It's made by Wes Craven. And the whole point, it's this ultimately kind of self-reflective, dark comedy about the horror genre, the slasher subgenre specifically. And it feels so right that it's made by Wes Craven because he's critiquing it, yet is also actively a part of it. And throughout his career up until now, he did heavily lean into these tropes that this movie kind of makes fun of, but he also reinforced these tropes within the genre by making such huge, successful horror movies, like the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. And so, while this is critical, while it is poking fun at slashers, obviously that's this man's bread and butter. He knows slasher movies like nobody else. And so it also feels like it's in love with slashers. If you love slashers, you love this movie, because this movie appreciates that you, as an audience member, like slasher movies and have seen many of them.
Yeah, in particular, the first movie, when it was made, was obviously, I think, very shocking to audiences because it really was the first of its kind. You watch it now, and it seems very on the nose, right? The characters are really cartoony, and their love of the horror genre and their commentary regarding the horror genre. And Jamie Kennedy's character in particular it's all stuff we already know, right? Like, why can't they ever see who's behind them, right? Why are they just leaving doors open? Why are they running upstairs? It's common critique now, but it is really hard to kind of take those blinders off and think, man, this movie was the first to make those comments. It was the first to expose all those tropes and the silly things in this genre that we love so much. And the second movie really, I think, doubles down, especially the cold open. It really doubles down on its satire.
Oh, yeah. Well, we will jump into that cold open momentarily because I love it.
It's crazy. Yeah.
But, yeah, you're so right. The Scream 2, it's Scream plus Scream, but bigger. And like you said, Jamie Kennedy, Randy Meeks is his character's name, who's the most meta, you would say, character. In this movie, he says the sequel's got to have more, it's got to be bigger, it's got to have more blood, more slashing, more gore. So, fittingly, this, Scream 2, even crazier. The 90s were an interesting time for slasher movies, because all the big ones had been established, and all the tropes had been played to death in the 80s, or even 79 with, like, Halloween. It was maybe the first, you could say, of this kind of franchise slasher. Then you got Friday the 13th, then you got your Freddy Kruegers coming along, and by this point, in the late 90s, we have seen every flavor of horror, and we're on, like, the fifth or sixth installment of X slasher franchise. So this feels like the perfect time for this movie to be made, and for a sequel to the first one to be made. When everything has a sequel, I think this movie works. This movie does work differently as a good... Now we're making fun of sequels.
Yeah. And I'd say that's probably my favorite part of this movie, is when the characters are, I guess when they're being used as vessels for this commentary. For me, that's when Scream is at its best, which is why later sequels really suffer, because I do think that the series really hinges its identity on this in the first two movies, and then it kind of goes awry later on in the franchise. I'm currently on a great Scream rewatch, and I've actually never seen the most recent two that have been made, so I can't speak to those. But that is when this movie's at its best. My favorite thing about this movie is that the cold open has a very young Jada Pinkett in it, Jada Pinkett Smith. And, well, then I guess she was just Jada Pinkett. But she's on the freaking poster of this movie, which is maybe my favorite thing about this. And she is dead in 15 minutes.
I know.
Maybe less. maybe less. Hilarious. It pulls a Drew Barrymore all over again, and you kind of fall for it all over again.
You get a big name to kill off. I do like that.
Yeah.
In most other movies, I know this is kind of a random one, but The Faculty comes to mind. Lots of other movies will have a character played by some famous actor and throw them everywhere on the poster and then kill them off, and it feels so cheap. It's just marketing. But in these movies, especially when it's on the poster and like you think they're going to be a big part of this movie, and they very well could be, because, you know, this movie has Courtney Cox, Sarah Michelle Gellar. You know, it's got some bigger names. I've seen Liev Schreiber and other things, you know. So it's a known movie with notable names in the cast. It could very well have been that Jada Pinkett Smith is consistently a part of this movie for the whole plot. But when they do kill off this famous person, it feels like such a, I'll say meta, for lack of a better term, joke, because it's this joke with the audience about, oh, haha, she was on the poster, but now she's dead. It doesn't feel lazy. It feels very intentional, and there's like a very good ironic humor in that. And I love this movie for its kind of ironic sense of humor.
Yeah, I really enjoy the way that it pokes fun at the way that we kind of commodify tragedy, right? And how it's only gotten more relevant, really, how desensitized we've become to these great tragedies when turning them into media. You know, watching the cold open here at home with my fiance, it feels so ridiculous at first. She was like, who does this? Because in the cold open of this film, is it the first stab movie, or is it already they've established that there's another one?
No, it's the first stab movie,
right?
Based on the events of the first movie.
Right. So the movie is based off of, yes, exactly right, the events of the first movie. And people are in these costumes, and they have plastic knives, and it's a rowdy movie theater.
Yeah, now this was ridiculous for me, too. I'll agree with your fiance.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. I'm with you. But we're wild. Like, people love this stuff. The movie theaters that we've been in where we were watching Halloween. You remember that crowd?
Yeah.
When we went to go see Halloween 2018? People eating it up, yelling at the screen. People wearing, Michael Myers gear to the premieres, right? Wearing their shirts. You wore a Halloween shirt, right? And I wore a Jason shirt myself.
Absolutely.
Just because I picked the better one. But
for that movie, you did.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. No, but, we do this. And Sidney Prescott, in the beginning of the movie and throughout a little bit, kind of discusses the effects that this movie and the sensationalization, that's not a word, is it?
Yeah.
Sensationalizing? Well, the vat of this awful tragedy and what it's done to her life. And she's kind of just jaded in the beginning of this movie. She gets like a prank call after the cold open. And she's like, when the movie's over, it'll end. I'm not super worried about it. And I don't know. That stuff for me hit. I liked it. I liked it's my favorite part of the movie is when it's kind of poking at the audience. I think it's, of course, aged, and it's not as relevant as it once was. But if you look at this in a vacuum for what it was when it came out in the late 90s, it's great.
No, I was agreeing about this crowd was too rowdy to be real. They're running through the aisles, like, in costumes. They're giving costumes away at the sneak preview. And it's just, like, way too ridiculous to be real. But because it's the cold open of Scream 2, you let it get away with it and you encourage it. It's so much fun, I think. I don't know. They're worse than, like, the gremlins in that theater. Like, they're throwing stuff.
That's true, to be honest.
They're crazy.
It's pretty bad.
But to your point about the commodification of kind of these tragedies, if I didn't know better, I also kind of would be like, who would make a movie like this based on a tragedy that would be insensitive, that wouldn't happen, that's ridiculous. But here we are. We've got, like, Netflix series dramatizations of Jeffrey Dahmer,
the most streamed show of that year, I believe.
Yeah, and stuff like that happens all the time. I'm pretty sure there's some John Wayne Gacy horror movies out there.
There is. I saw one of them on Tubi.
Yeah, on Tubi, absolutely. I know for a fact there's one called, like, Gacy versus Dahmer, and it's...
Oh.
Yeah, I know. God. Yeah, it's just really distasteful. But that's
Jesus.
real. And like if that was what they were showing in Scream 2, I wouldn't have batted an eye. I would have been like, yeah, that is ridiculous. This is a cartoon. This is larger than life and over the top. But I guess it really isn't, and we obviously have not gotten better and maybe have just gotten worse in that regard.
Yeah. It's interesting because, it feels cartoony, but yet for me it feels so relevant, which is kind of the metric for me as far as commentary in a film goes. Right? How does it stick the landing, and for how long can it stick the landing? Scream seems to really stick, I'd say, some of the landing. I will be upfront. I don't like this movie.
Oh, wow. You praised it this whole time.
Well, I'll praise the things that work, but it's like anything, right? There's a lot of this movie that doesn't work for me. And it's not the themes. I think the themes in Scream are fine. And honestly, knowing what I know now about the production history of this film and kind of what happened and why the parts that don't work for me exist in the first place, which we can get into, I don't really blame Wes Craven. I obviously love Wes Craven and respect Wes Craven. And I think Kevin Williamson, the writer of, I don't know when he stopped writing for these movies, but he definitely did the first two. I think he's a talented guy too. So, I don't know if you know this, but the ending of this movie leaked. Famously. It was like one of the first internet leaks of all time.
In 97?
Yeah. Yes, it was one of the first leaks on the internet.
Oh, wow. The three people on the internet were like losing their mind.
Yeah, well, it was huge, actually. It was a huge controversy. And there's heavy speculation that that's why they kind of pooped out that ending of this film. And for me, it makes perfect sense because I hate the ending of this movie.
Yeah, the general fan consensus, I think, is that the ending is awful. And I understand that.
Yeah, when you consider what happened, I think it makes sense.
Yeah, did they just change the ending drastically from the leak?
So, I could be wrong here. I couldn't really find confirmation. But the original leak did say that there were two different killers. Wes Craven and the production team may or may not have denied, they might have said it was an earlier version of the script or something. I don't think they ever officially confessed that was correct, that the leak was correct. But I need to believe that because the ending of this movie, I can't explain it otherwise. It's such a sham. Okay, like, it's so bad.
I guess we can get into that in a bit. For me, to sum my feelings about this movie up, I like this movie. It's very much similar to the first movie, but it is way sloppier. Simply. I haven't seen any of the other ones. And I will watch the new one, the 2019 one. The one that came in was kind of the Scream version of Halloween 2018. My brother saw that one. He liked it, and he said the second one wasn't as good. And I'll watch those. I want to watch more Scream movies, but I can't imagine Scream 3 is remotely as good as either of these movies. Like you said, the Scream franchise hinges on this like satirical identity, but you we already had Scream the sequel. What are you going to do for the third one? Had Scream been made today, I could see them doing like a prequel movie. I don't think they've done that. Maybe they would have done that if this were a different time. But this is not a franchise I think you can squeeze too much out of. I do think it's interesting, though, that in all these movies, or at least in the first couple of movies, Sidney Prescott is the main character, and then I think at least is in the other movies. And there's no consistent villain. Every slasher has their villain, and in this movie, it's like a whodunit murder mystery. Who is the slasher? And it's a different person every time. And that's interesting. We have the same protagonist, different slasher. That's one thing that is unique about this, I guess.
Well, and I remember, I don't know if you remember this, but I remember us seeing the trailer for the new Scream movie. Or I guess one of the new Scream movies. And in that trailer, Courtney Cox, she picks up the phone and she's like, "It's you again." And we looked at each other and we were like, that doesn't work. You can't do the Halloween 2018 thing, period. Because the whole thing with Laurie Strode and the Halloween 2018 movie is that she's haunted by Michael her entire life. And Michael's one guy, right? The Courtney Cox thing, her saying, "It's you," really makes no sense because it's not one person in any of the movies.
Yeah. Then again, I haven't seen it. Maybe it it does it well somehow. I don't know. I'll see it soon and I'll tell you how it is.
Yeah. I think I'm also going to watch it. I'm probably going to make my way through all of them.
I'd like to. Now, what doesn't work, though, is that you can't have a whole franchise around one protagonist. You know, you can around a killer because people like to see Jason kill people, you know. If that's what every movie is, right, then that's what people are here for. Nobody's here to see specifically Sidney Prescott survive. As fun as it is, it's not sustainable for a whole franchise. And while the Scream mask and like look is iconic at this point, very iconic, it's not a character. It's not someone you can really be afraid of and rally behind. It's just some guy, maybe.
Yeah, no, you're right. To be honest, I'll admit, I always thought the design was pretty lame.
Yeah, it's just like a basic Halloween ghost. I didn't say I liked it. I said it was iconic. But yeah,
it is that objectively iconic. I like Neve Campbell in these movies as a final girl. You know, she plays Sidney Prescott. There's something interesting about her. I don't know. You know, she's a decent actress, and I personally find the story of mom being murdered and the baggage that comes with that interesting. I think she's easy to empathize with and to not relate to, I suppose, but you're automatically going to rally behind her, right? Because of what she's been through. And, you know, she has awful luck, right? You know, she had a killer boyfriend and a creep friend, and I guess that's an understatement for what they did. In the second movie, there's all sorts of stuff, too. Now, again, they really don't stick the landing with the way that they end this thing, but I think she's a good protagonist. But I guess you're right. You know, you don't watch this for her. She famously left the last film in a fiery glory because she was not being paid what she thought was owed to her. You know, she thought that she deserved more money. I don't think that she liked how much other people were getting paid in comparison, and she dipped. You know, she straight up left. And that movie was huge without her, which I think kind of it backfired on her a little bit, you know. Whatever, right? Do your thing and stick up for yourself, I suppose. But that movie was a huge hit. So what can you do?
Yeah, when you say the last movie, do you mean this most recent one?
Yeah, for the sixth one.
I see. Okay.
So, like, famously, yeah, they came back and were like, hey, come do the sixth movie. And there wasn't a script yet. She hated the amount that they were paying her. She's been in this franchise for 20 years at this point, 20 plus years. So she thought, no, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to be undervalued. And she didn't take the job. Good for her.
Yeah, definitely good for her. The more we talk about this movie, the more I'm interested in that reboot that came out recently. Because for movies like this, it's hard to have legacy characters, you know, like Laurie Strode. Because if you keep having the same main characters for every single movie, you got to kill someone. And so that number dwindles. But I do know that this whole legacy character kind of newer reboot trope that we've been seeing is the focus of that movie. I know it's somehow what they're poking fun at. So I guess maybe they did find a way to make it work, but I can't see this being that sustainable. And according to my brother, the sequel to that movie wasn't that great. So maybe it wasn't sustainable, but I don't know.
Here's something I can say with absolute certainty. Jamie Kennedy should never work again.
Damn. Based on this movie? Or?
I abhor Jamie Kennedy. No, based on basically his entire body of work.
Damn.
Enemy of the show, Jamie Kennedy.
Oh, wow. You just declared war on him.
That's right. Do you like him? You're a big fan? You did tell me that you were a big fan of his work on The Cleveland Show.
Yeah, I've never seen The Cleveland Show. And in fact, I've never seen almost any of these movies he's in.
Acting brand new for the mic.
I guess so. I see he's in Fanboy and Tantrum, so.
The best thing Jamie Kennedy has ever done is he dated Jennifer Love Hewitt.
Okay.
Shout out to him.
What movie did you see him in that you just, besides this movie?
Dude, what? He's in a ton. First of all, Scream, the first movie. Okay, terrible in it. Scream 2, terrible in it. Of course, super famous for Son of the Mask. Terrible freaking movie. Won a Raspberry for that.
Oh, he is, yeah.
Yeah. Just the worst. Literally just the worst.
Okay, well, sorry to this man. I think he got better in this movie. I think everybody else, I feel like their writing is so much worse. The writing in this movie for any of the characters, huge downgrade from the last movie. Everyone is saying things that it's like, what? What is going on? And I know it's true. Exaggeration and parody, but at when it comes to this, at this point, I think we are using its satirical lens as an excuse for it to be terrible. But no, it's just terrible. I'm not going to give them credit like they were five-head trying to make the dialogue terrible. I think they just didn't know what to write. Sorry to get off topic. But while everybody else's dialogue is worse, I think he is better. Maybe not because of his dialogue, but because I think he's just acting more ostentatiously. He seems to be more like sure of himself, I guess. And also his writing in the first movie was also incredibly inorganic, and he was probably one of the most inorganic characters. So this isn't like that much of a downgrade, I guess.
I don't disagree with that. I just also find that character annoying. Then again, there's a lot of annoying characters in that first movie. In fact, all of the friends in the first movie are pretty annoying, right? Like the entire ensemble. Billy's weird and greasy. You and I have had convos about Billy.
A lot of Billy talk.
Yeah. He's I don't know. He just looks like he put Vaseline in his hair, and Jamie Kennedy's loud and weird, and what's his name? Shaggy?
Matthew Lillard.
Yeah.
Friend of the show.
Too much going on in that movie. Maybe. I'll give him that one. But yeah, there's a lot going on there with those characters. I say here we get a much duller ensemble. The two boys in particular.
I think I would
right? The new boyfriend. What even is his name?
It's Derek. And
that's right. Thank you.
Was my least favorite character.
Derek's awful. Sorry to that man, too. I know that guy was in Stand By Me, and that's it. Timothy Olyphant, who plays Mickey, I've seen him in quite a few things. I think most notably, he was like a kind of a recurring character in both The Office and The Mindy Project.
Okay. And
he's done recent stuff. He was in The Good Place. Not popular in my home, but, you know, Oliphant's got his hits. But man, another guy that I just could not get behind in this movie. I wasn't watching this movie for the performances. Let's just say that.
Yeah, definitely. I think I do agree that maybe the ensemble's not as interesting. I loved Sarah Michelle Gellar's character, Cece, simply because it was Sarah Michelle Gellar. And this is kind of Jada Pinkett Smith again, where you get like a really famous actress to get killed very quickly. But this one feels less like staring the audience in the eye and winking at them.
Right.
This was
she was around a little bit longer.
Yeah, I kind of wish she was around longer than this, though. She was one of the first kills after the cold open, of course.
You're right. She was famous, but was she super famous yet?
She was pretty famous. She was getting a lot of work. I think Buffy's
this
on the
was
up
the
and up.
year. Buffy was on the up and up, that's true. But this was the year that she landed I Know What You Did Last Summer and Scream 2. So I think like 97 was the year of SMG. I feel like that was her. I feel like this really launched her afterwards.
I guess I don't have the historical context for this. She's uber famous forever in my mind. So
she's great. She's Sarah Michelle Gellar in the movie. It is what it is, but she's not awful for the 15 minutes that she's around. I think Liev Schreiber is fine as Cotton. He kind of brings an interesting element to the movie. In the first movie, Cotton is, of course, the man accused of killing Sidney Prescott's mother. After the events of the first movie, he is freed. And so we have an interesting element in this film where he kind of thinks that, and I suppose not completely incorrectly, believes that Neve Campbell's character, Sidney, should kind of help him clear his name, considering that he did, I don't even remember how much time he did in prison for.
He did 1 year.
That's a lot of time for something you didn't do in this movie. I don't remember if they changed that later on. He's kind of a fishy dude.
Yeah, he's really sketchy the entire time. And this is also a problem with this movie, is they portray every single character as ominous and sketchy and malicious, just so that way you keep guessing. Just so that way, oh, could it be him? Is it the boyfriend again? Are there two killers? You know, there's so many red herrings in this movie. And then for what is the payoff? Because when we finally do see who the killers are. Yeah, there's two again. All that guessing. It wasn't any of those characters, nor was it ever... It just felt a little unfair that the movie kept you going for this long and then have all these characters be kind of irrelevant.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely unearned. I guess, whatever, big reveal. Timothy Olyphant's character, who is just kind of this background dweeby boy that hangs out with Sydney's boyfriend, is one of the killers. His motive is super unclear. Do you recall what it was at the end of the movie?
Yeah, he wants to be a landmark case where he's going to blame TV for making him violent. And then he's going to get the best lawyer in the world to get him off. And then he's going to sue the TV industry for money for making him violent. And I don't know what kind of convoluted BS, shoehorn, whatever this was. This character is so shoehorned in, is in the first scene when they're in college discussing movies, and then is in the background for maybe 2 more scenes. When he came out and revealed it was he the entire time, I remembered he was a character, because hadn't seen him since the start, and he hadn't been important.
And that's not even, to add insult to injury, Billy Loomis's mother being the other killer.
Yeah. Well, not only that, it's this recurring newswoman, we find out she secretly has a fake name, and she's actually Billy Loomis's mother, and that reveal makes no sense. I don't think it works at all. It's so stupid, and it's stupid. If you're going to tell me that they last minute made a different ending to cover up a leak, that kind of is why I believe you, is because it explains.
It's the only explanation.
Because it feels so unnatural.
Yeah, it's literally the only explanation. It makes no sense. It's so poorly done. It's kind of an insulting ending, to be honest. Yeah. And the worst part about it is that it drags on for forever. You know, by the time Timothy Olyphant and Sidney Prescott have their initial reveal / struggle where kind of stuff hits the fan and everything comes to light, I'd say it's 25 minutes of nonsense. And by the way, God bless Laura Metcalf, who is actually a great freaking actress. I mean, she's Academy Award nominated. She, I believe, has 2 or 3 Tonys. I mean, she's legit, but this is not the one, man. This is not. Oh, she's great in Lady Bird.
She got an Oscar for
whatever.
That.
There you go. But man, I don't know. There's no level of Laura Metcalf, I guess, that can save your reveal at the end if it's all just nonsense.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she wasn't.
It's very unearned
until the end, and it feels like maybe in the script and while they were writing this movie, she never was until they had to change something.
No, you're right. You're right.
Because the whole bit is she has a fake name and she's really Billy Loomis's mom and is the killer and yada yada. But she's a news reporter. Did she change her name and get a job as a news reporter? Or is she pretending to do the news and has a fake camera and everything? Because either of those makes no sense.
Her name is so stupid, too. It's Debbie Salt, ma'am.
Alert. Yeah, I don't know.
She saw a Little Debbie cupcake and a salt shaker next to each other. Yeah, okay, we'll go with that. So dumb.
This ending really takes the piss out of this movie, because this movie
it bites.
Really relies on the ending. It being a whodunit, of course, the whole thing leads up to you finding out who done it, and if that doesn't work, then so much setup is not paid off by the end of the movie.
Yeah.
And the first movie works because it sticks the landing. And here it's oh man, hated to see that happen.
Right.
But
and that's why I'd go as far as saying, yeah, I don't like this movie. I don't think it's good. Because exactly, it is a whodunit. And by the end of the movie, I don't care. I don't care who done it. I want the movie to end. And that's a crime. Here's the thing. I'm glad that they don't make it the boyfriend again in this movie. But the viewer knows that it's not going to be the boyfriend again. They're not going to do that twice. So there's really no stakes here throughout the whole thing. You're already thinking, okay, Derek isn't the killer. They're not going to do it twice. They're not. If they had nuts, they would have done it again, but they didn't. And you know that they're not going to do it the whole movie. And you know it's not going to be freaking Courtney Cox because she's Courtney Cox. And you know it's not going to be Dewey because I guess you could think it is, considering he's walking around with a limp the entire movie. You might think, oh, it's an act. But no, I mean, he's sweet, and you want him and Gail to be together forever, and it's just not a thing. It's not a thing. So it really leaves you with like 3 options throughout the whole movie. And those options are, for the record, Jamie Kennedy, Timothy Oliphant's character, Mickey, and Cotton Weary, okay? And you already know it's not going to be Jamie Kennedy, okay? So really that's not there either. You don't really care if it's Mickey or Cotton. And then it's not even Mickey and Cotton. It's Mickey and this random lady that's hanging around the entire movie. It's entirely unearned. Entirely unearned, frustrating. I hated it.
I think that's where me and you differ, though, is I will say I like this movie. I enjoy this movie. I have a fun time with this movie. And I can do that kind of ignoring the ending. I don't like the ending, but I'm enjoying the ride.
That's fair.
I think the chase scenes in this movie are great. Where a lot of things don't work in this movie, it is fun to see. In particular, that very first one with Sarah Michelle Gellar that we mentioned earlier. At one point, the door's left open and you see the guy sneaking in the background. There's good tension. He's on the phone with, the guy calls, says, do you like scary movies? So in one way, it's doing the thing from the first movie that's kind of like the signature of the first movie. Like if you were to say, what's the catchphrase of Scream? You'd say, do you like scary movies? It's very iconic. And they do that, yet also kind of add a few other ways to make it tense. I think that the kill is finally done when it does happen. It's just she just gets stabbed in the back and then thrown off the roof. And that's kind of lame.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal, though.
Yeah, but I enjoyed the struggle. And so many of the kills are like that. The faux Dewey kill, where they're behind this screen and they're running through this like audio production facility at the university. I like that whole sequence. I love the
but you don't buy it for a second.
No, I don't, but it's Scream 2. I'm not trying to be very picky about how serious my chase scenes are, how realistic they are.
Kill Dewey. Kill him.
Yeah, I do kill Dewey.
Dewey.
Kill Dewey. I kind of like it, though. Once again, if you ignore the ending, you clearly watch him be killed. He's, like, stabbed to death so many times. He's dead. And then at the ending, they're like, he lived. I kind of like how dumb that is. That might just be
it's silly.
That's definitely probably just me. But
you want to subvert my expectations. It's not by casting Jada Pinkett and killing her in the first 10 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think back then that might have done something. I want decapitate Sidney Prescott in the first 10 minutes of the movie. Now we're talking.
Oh, you haven't seen Scream 3.
She lives in all of it. She was given the opportunity to reprise the...
She came back from the dead. I don't know.
You imagine.
That'd be pretty awesome. It'd be jumping the Scream 3 is famously in the third movie, they jumped the shark.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
The way that they bring Sidney Prescott back is that they stab a metal pole from a fence into her grave, and then lightning strikes it. Yeah, and she's zombie Sidney Prescott throughout the whole movie.
I don't even want to say the kills, because the kills themselves are always like, oh no, he's been stabbed. But the build-up, the struggle, the chase, the hunt.
Look, I enjoy... Well, I mean, this movie's 120 minutes? It's close. Yeah. It's 2 hours or close to 2 hours.
Yeah, it's about 2 hours.
I enjoy probably 75 to 90 minutes of this movie. It really, really craps the bed at the end, which is a shame. I've seen Scream 3. I don't remember it very well. I watched it probably in high school. The one that I've never seen is... Or maybe I've never finished it, because I do remember Hayden Panettiere in it a little bit, is Scream 4. I just can't for the life of me really remember anything about that movie.
Well, I could forgive this movie for being predictable. You don't know who it is at the first movie, but this is Scream 2. It's the sequel to the horror movie. In the first movie, you're introduced to the franchise, you get a love for the franchise, and then you're there for the sequel because you expect it to be like the first movie. People are not going to Halloween 6 because they want something different. Obviously, at this point. So... if Scream 2 was entirely predictable because you've seen it before, I wouldn't mind that as much as I mind the out of left field, she was really his mom, like, random thing that they wrote in the last 5 minutes of production.
Yeah. Dumb. I want you to bring back Mrs. Prescott, and she's the killer.
Maybe they do. You haven't
actually,
seen the new one.
No, the third movie, I know they play with that for like a little bit.
I gotta watch more Scream movies.
But man, they're ridiculous.
They are.
I'm gonna keep watching them too.
They're only gonna get worse, though. I know that too.
They only get worse. Yeah, I know it's a steep decline. People like the new ones, I think.
Something I also like about this franchise is, obviously, Halloween came out 79, I think. I want to say Friday the 13th came out 81, I believe. 82, maybe. Nightmare on Elm Street came out in the 80s. That's kind of the era of when these slashers were starting, Evil Dead, etc. Scream being started in 96 and the sequels kind of going from there. That's a lot closer to my time. So I do remember when like Scream 4 came out. So it feels like I did find the tail end of this franchise as a child coming to a close. And so now that we have these kind of remakes, it does, for me, create a sense of nostalgia that I couldn't really get with any of the other ones. And I know it's just Scream, and I didn't even watch Scream as a kid, but it feels good to be on the other end of this, age of this time.
Yeah, by the time Scream came out, it had 2 decades of fantastic horror material to dig through and use as inspiration / satirical motivation. And I think that's what I really respect about this movie. Is Wes Craven, who was instrumental to 80s horror, brought everything he knew from that successful decade of his and from what all of his contemporaries were working on and made something that, though I don't love all of it or all of the entries that I've seen, resonates with, yes, a different generation of horror fans like you and I, primarily you. But yeah, it is. It very much feels like the franchise of a new generation. It really does. In particular, the first movie, rewatching it. This isn't your dad's slasher. This isn't Jason. This isn't Freddy. And maybe that's why Ghostface not being the same guy is kind of central to this movie. Because maybe it's trying to... Not even maybe. I'm fairly certain that Wes Craven knew he didn't need one central figure in this film. He's kind of got the mascot with the suit, but that killer could be anybody, and I think that's what really separates this movie from the rest. To be fair, when have you really seen anything like that even now, right? Scream has been out for the last 20 plus years, and it's still a pretty unique horror experience. Now everything's a reboot. They're bringing back The Exorcist. They're probably making another Friday the 13th. They tried to reboot Nightmare on Elm Street. Everything is a reboot. This movie, though, it also rebooted itself, I suppose.
Yeah.
It just feels different. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I understand that. Well, thank you for joining me then, Adrian.
Thank you.
Of course. And I'm sorry to anyone listening. Goodbye.